There are many pastors out there who are spiritually abusive, overly controlling, and incredibly narcissistic and manipulative. And they hate it. They can't handle it when you ask questions that are even legitimate questions, reasonable questions. They get very defensive and they use manipulation tactics to try to defend themselves. They can never enter into a reasonable discussion because they don't have reasonable answers. I'm going to share with you what I believe is the greatest manipulation tactic that these pastors use. Maybe you've been in a church before where things are not being done the way that you think they should be done. When you look at the Bible, you don't see things aligning with it. It might be the sermon that's preached, a very watered down sermon, or a sermon that's not biblically accurate. It could be the way that other things are done inside of the church. And you want to confront your pastor because you're genuinely concerned, you are grieving about the situation, and you want to bring this to the attention of people. You might have remained silent for a while, but you can't stay silent any longer. And your heart's in the right place. Your positions are supported by Scripture, and you go and approach your pastor. And the pastor's all smiling, and all of a sudden you bring up your concern, and all of a sudden the pastor's not smiling. The manipulation tactic that the pastor will often use in these situations is to question your motives. They will gaslight you and try to question try to change your own perception of reality and paint it as if you are the one with bad motives, and that's the reason why you're bringing this up. There's a reason why they do this, and it's a very obvious reason. If you come to a pastor and you bring them genuine concerns biblically, and you might even show them where you believe that part of a sermon wasn't exactly accurate or something like that, and you're showing them the Scripture. Now, if the Scripture aligns with what you're saying, that pastor knows that Scripture is to be the ultimate authority. So they can't say, well, it doesn't matter what the Scripture says. They don't have any scriptural arguments themselves because you're accurate. They can't disprove what you're saying scripturally. So they're not left with any other options other than to try to distract you and divert you, derail the conversation, move it away from this discussion of Scripture, and move it in a direction where they question your motives, which is something that they can't see, which is something that you can't prove to them is right. And it can be very effective on most people because, number one, most people don't like confrontation, and when that happens, they're really taken aback. Number two, people in this situation are often genuinely wanting to please the pastor, do the right thing by the pastor. So they're very sensitive, they're very vulnerable in that position, and they're just not prepared for a comment like that. And thirdly, when someone throws that at you, the number one tendency is to want to defend yourself, right? So you'll get into trying to defend yourself, to try to go, no, my motives are pure, this and that, and the pastor, well, I don't think so, you're not on board with this. It seems like you're trying to cause division. It seems like you're saying you know better. It seems like you're, questioning what I'm doing or whatever. You're questioning the leadership of the church. The Scriptures say that you're to obey your pastor. It's clear that you've got other motives going on inside of you, and you really need to go away and look at that because there's something not right inside of you. And that is just, I believe, the number one manipulation tactic. The pastor will do that, and then he'll point to other scriptures which he misapplies, saying things like, we're not to touch God's anointed, we're to obey our pastors. And meanwhile, he's completely sidestepped the issue that you've raised to him because he can't address it scripturally. So that's a tactic that these pastors will use, and you want to really look out for it. People will be caught off guard, but you want to be prepared if you're going to approach a pastor that this could be the response you get, and you want to decide how you're going to respond. I mean, if a pastor does respond like that, That's not the type of church that you want to be at anyway. You've got your answer there. It's a pastor who is not able to be corrected, is prideful, doesn't care about the scripture above all else, cares about his fragile ego and his identity, which is in being this leader and the pastor who can't be questioned and who is always right. So you want to just be prepared for that. Sadly, many people can then fall into guilt. They can start to question their own motives. They can then become silenced and just sit there. And it's a very effective tactic. What I would say to a pastor in that situation is I would say, okay, like my motives, that's one thing. But let's just, even if my motives, I'll say my motives are good, but even if my motives were as bad as Hitler, even if my motives were the worst motives in the world, is what I'm saying here accurate or not? Do you agree with what I'm saying here? And I actually even had one pastor, he said, I disagree with you, Matt. And I said, well, where do you disagree with me? Can you show me the scripture? He says, oh, well, it's not that I disagree with you, but I disagree with your motives. Sidesteps the conversation. And it's like, well, okay, that's fine, but am I right here? And if I am right here, then wouldn't you want to align yourself with this? That's the thing, but the pastor can be so effective at derailing the conversation that it doesn't even get back to that place. So you just want to have that in mind. Unfortunately, that's the way that a lot of people operate. So I don't know if you've had these experiences before in your church or with a pastor. There are a lot of good pastors out there. There are good churches out there, believe it or not. I know many of you haven't found one, but if you come across a pastor like this, I would say run. Absolutely run. If someone is not interested in genuinely discussing the word and wants to play these silly games of manipulation, then get out of there. He is a fool who is not prepared to listen to truth. Leave your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Bless you, friends.